Italy has always been the land of football artists. Andrea Pirlo, Roberto Baggio, Alessandro Del Piero, men who painted the game with elegance and style. But Gennaro Gattuso, he was no artist. He was the sound of war drums. They called him Ringhio, the snarler, the mad dog of Italian football, a man who treated every match like a battlefield, where the ball was the treasure and blood was simply part of the price. To many, he was nothing more than an angry man with no real talent. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because behind the crunching tackles, the wild outbursts, and the fiery temper was a man driven by loyalty, sacrifice, and a heart bigger than anyone ever gave him credit for. This is the story of Gennaro Gattuso, the unmisunderstood warrior who turned rage into legend and gave football a kind of passion the game may never see again. Gattuso wasn't born under the bright lights of San Siro. He came from a small fishing town in southern Italy called Coriano Calabro. Life there was simple, but far from easy. From a young age, Rino, as everyone called him, learned that nothing in life was handed to you. Every opportunity had to be fought for. Every small victory had to be earned. At just 12 years old, he joined Perugia's youth academy. He wasn't the most gifted player, but what set him apart was his mentality. Even as a boy, he had a fire in his eyes, a determination that coaches had rarely seen before. By 17, he was already playing with the first team. But instead of settling for the comfort of home, Gattuso packed his bags and left Italy altogether, a bold move for someone still so young. Why? Because he knew one thing: if he wanted to rise above the rest, he had to push himself into the unknown. And that's how Rino Gattuso's journey took him somewhere completely unexpected, to Scotland. When Gattuso arrived in Scotland, he didn't speak the language, didn't know anyone, and had no safety net. All he had was his stubborn will to succeed. The move itself wasn't smooth. Perugia accused Rangers of signing him illegally and even took the case to FIFA. But Rino didn't care about the politics. He wasn't there to read headlines. He was there to fight for a career. On his debut, he showed flashes of what was to come: energy, aggression, and a fearlessness that instantly set him apart. He scored early in the UEFA Cup against Strasbourg, proving he could deliver on big nights. But the true turning point came in December 1997. Rangers were playing Hearts, and a defender named Paul Boyson had lunged into Gattuso with a tackle that could have ended his career. The referee ignored it. No card, no justice. Rino burned with rage. He waited, bided his time, and when the chance came, he struck back with a reckless challenge. The whistle blew. Red card. He was gone. For most players, that moment would be a disaster. For Gattuso, it was something else. That red card wasn't just a punishment, it was his initiation, the first taste of blood that awakened the beast inside him. From that day on, everyone knew Gattuso wasn't just another young Italian abroad. He was a warrior who would rather go down fighting than ever be disrespected. But soon, he would face an even bigger challenge, not from opponents, but from his own manager.
By 1998, Rangers had a new manager, and he didn't trust Gattuso. Instead of letting him dominate the midfield, he pushed him out to right back. For Rino, that wasn't football. That was an insult. And if there's one thing Gattuso would never accept, it was being underestimated. So he packed his bags once again, it was time to return home. Juventus wanted him. The biggest club in Italy had their eyes on this fiery young midfielder. But instead of chasing the glamour, Rino chose Salernitana, a newly promoted team fighting for survival in Serie A. Why? Because he knew he'd get what he craved most: battles, hard matches, the chance to grow. And he was right. In just one season, he proved himself as one of the most relentless midfielders in the league. Then, in 1999, destiny called. AC Milan, giants of Europe, signed Gattuso. Suddenly, the kid from Calabria who once played in the fishing streets of Corigliano was walking into a locker room filled with legends. On his Champions League debut against Chelsea, the world saw a young man who wasn't intimidated by the stage. At only 21, he showed he was ready for the highest level. But the real test came in October that year, the Milan Derby. Standing across from him was none other than Ronaldo, the greatest striker in the world at the time. Most youngsters would have been terrified. Gattuso, he planted fear in Ronaldo's eyes. From that night, Milan fans knew Rino wasn't just another signing. He was their warrior, their fighter, their heartbeat. And soon, he would find the perfect partner to unlock the best version of himself.
In 2001, AC Milan made a move that would change everything. They signed a quiet, technical playmaker from Inter, Andrea Pirlo. At first glance, Pirlo and Gattuso looked like total opposites. Pirlo was elegance, vision, and calmness. Gattuso was chaos, fury, and fire. But sometimes opposites don't just attract, they create balance. When Carlo Ancelotti took over as Milan's manager later that year, he saw something no one else did. He paired Pirlo's genius with Gattuso's relentless energy. It was the perfect combination, the brain and the heart, the artist and the warrior. Gattuso covered every blade of grass, broke down attacks, and did the dirty work no one else wanted to do. That gave Pirlo the freedom to orchestrate the game with his passing. Together, they formed one of the greatest midfield duos the game has ever seen. And it wasn't just the two of them. Add Rui Costa, Clarence Seedorf, and later Kaká, and Milan had a midfield that was simply untouchable. They didn't just compete, they dominated. With that core, Milan won the Champions League in 2003, the Coppa Italia, the European Super Cup, and then, in 2004, the Serie A title. Gattuso wasn't scoring goals or hitting glamorous passes, but he was the engine, the spark, the warrior who made sure Milan's artists could shine. Fans loved him because while stars like Shevchenko and Maldini took the spotlight, they knew Rino was the one spilling his blood for the badge. But Gattuso's fiery personality wasn't just reserved for opponents. Soon, he'd show the world he wasn't afraid to take on even the biggest names in football, including Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
By the mid-2000s, Gattuso wasn't just a player, he was a force of nature. His intensity made him unpredictable, sometimes uncontrollable. Take September 2003. Milan were facing Ajax when Zlatan Ibrahimovic, never one to back down, started pushing Gattuso's limits. Most players would have kept their distance. Not Rino. He slapped Zlatan right in the face. No hesitation, no fear. That moment went down in football folklore. The fearless pit bull against the giant Swede. That was Gattuso. He didn't care who you were. Ballon d'Or winner or Sunday League player. Respect had to be earned, and he demanded it every time he stepped on the pitch. But passion has a price, and in 2005, that price came in Istanbul. Milan stormed into the Champions League final against Liverpool, and by halftime they were 3-0 up. The trophy was practically in their hands. But then came one of the most shocking collapses in football history. Liverpool clawed their way back, tied the game, and in the penalty shootout, Milan fell apart. Gattuso was crushed. That night haunted him. For a man who lived on pride and fight, Blowing a 3-0 lead on the biggest stage felt like a scar that would never fade. But if there was one thing about Gattuso, it was this: he never stayed down. He carried that pain, turned it into fuel, and swore that one day Milan would have their revenge. And he wouldn't have to wait long.
After the heartbreak of Istanbul, Gattuso shifted his focus to the biggest prize of all, the World Cup. Italy wasn't favored heading into the 2006 tournament. They had failed in recent Euros and World Cups, while teams like Brazil, Germany, and France were the favorites. But what Italy had was unity, and a midfield built on the bond between Pirlo and Gattuso. Pirlo was the architect, Gattuso was the soldier, and together they carried Italy through. Against Australia in the round of 16, Rino was everywhere. 8 duels won, 5 tackles, countless recoveries. With Italy down to 10 men, he doubled his effort, covering the field like a man possessed. When Totti scored the last-minute penalty, Italy lived to fight another day, thanks in large part to Gattuso's relentless heart. Against Ukraine in the quarterfinal, he was even better, earning man of the match despite not scoring or assisting. His job wasn't glory, it was sacrifice. Then came the semifinal against hosts Germany. 90 minutes, extra time, the pressure was unbearable. But Gattuso thrived in chaos. He broke up play after play, threw himself into tackles, and gave Italy the platform to strike late. 2 goals in the dying minutes, and Italy were in the final. And then came the biggest night of his life, July 9th, 2006, against France. Gattuso recorded 15 tackles and 17 duels won, more than anyone else on the pitch. He did the dirty work so Italy could dream. But when the game went to penalties, something unusual happened. Because of Zidane's infamous red card, Italy were required by the rules to remove one player from the penalty lineup. Gattuso volunteered. He wanted his teammates to have their moment, even if it meant sacrificing his own. That's leadership. That's Gattuso. Italy lifted the World Cup, and Rino celebrated in the only way he knew how, ripping off his shorts and sprinting across the field in pure, unfiltered joy. The mad dog of Italian football had become a world champion.
For Gattuso, the pain of Istanbul never faded. Losing a Champions League final after leading 3-0 wasn't just a defeat, it was a scar. And he carried that scar like a soldier waiting for the chance to strike back. That chance came in 2007. Milan once again marched to the Champions League final, and fate put them against the same opponent, Liverpool. This time, there would be no collapse. Gattuso was everywhere, snapping into tackles, breaking Liverpool's rhythm, and pushing his teammates forward. Milan won 2-1, and the revenge was complete. The scar of Istanbul was finally healed. That night wasn't about goals or assists, it was about redemption. And for Gattuso, it was proof that persistence, fight, and sheer will could rewrite history. But as the years went on, the battles began to take their toll. Gattuso played through injuries, surgeries, and setbacks. By 2012, after 13 unforgettable years, he left AC Milan. For fans, it was the end of an era. He wasn't just a midfielder, he was the heartbeat of a team that conquered Europe. Yet Rino wasn't done with football, not even close. He would carry his fire into the next chapter, the dugout. When Gattuso left Milan in 2012, he left behind more than just numbers. He left behind an identity. For 13 years, he had been the warrior who bled for the shirt, the man who gave Milan its edge, its bite, its soul. But warriors don't retire quietly. Rino stepped into coaching, bringing his same fire to the sidelines. From Switzerland to Greece to AC Milan itself, and later to Napoli and Valencia, he carried his trademark intensity wherever he went. Some criticized his tactical approach, others doubted his style. But one thing was certain: when Gattuso stood in the technical area, his players knew they were led by a man who would fight with them, not just for them. And that's his legacy. He may not have been an artist like Pirlo or Baggio. He wasn't a genius with the ball. But football isn't just about elegance. It's about passion, loyalty, and sacrifice. And no one embodied those values more than Rino Gattuso. Fans will always remember the tackles, the wild eyes, the moments of madness. But they'll also remember the man who put his team above himself, who gave every ounce of his soul for his club and his country. Gattuso was misunderstood by many, but for those who truly watched him, he was never just an angry player. He was a warrior, a leader, a legend.
They called him a thug, a hothead, a player without grace. But Gattuso didn't play for trophies. He played for blood, for sweat, for the guy next to him. He played for the fans screaming in the rain, for the shirt on his chest, for the town that forged him, where football wasn't poetry, it was pulse, where every tackle was a promise, every sprint a prayer, and every sacrifice a silent vow to never let his brothers fall. He never needed the spotlight. He was the shadow that made the light shine brighter. Pirlo's passes, they flew because Gattuso cleared the sky. Shevchenko's goals, they landed because Gattuso broke the defense first. Italy's World Cup, it was lifted because he carried it on his back when no one else could. And now, as he stands on the touchline, clipboard in hand, fire still burning in his eyes, he's not trying to recreate the past. He's trying to resurrect its soul, the grit, the fury, the unbreakable loyalty, the kind of football that doesn't just win games, it wins hearts. So the next time you see a midfielder dive into a tackle like it's his last breath, remember Gennaro Gattuso. The mad dog? Maybe, but also the most loyal soldier football ever knew. They misunderstood him. The world labeled him. History almost forgot him. But we won't, because legends like Gattuso, they don't fade, they echo. And somewhere, in a locker room, on a muddy pitch, in the heart of a kid fighting for his place, his bark is still heard, loud, proud, unstoppable. Football may never see his like again, and that is the real tragedy.